Hey y'all, so today I'm going to answer the question, how do you get grants before you have 501c3 status? Let's get into it. Hey y'all, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I help new and small nonprofits get up and running. If you need help with your nonprofit, don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I drop a new video every single week. Okay, so the question of the day is, how do you get grants before you have 501c3 status? And for those of you who are really new and you don't know anything about this, 501c3 status is a tax exempt status that is designated by the IRS. So when you establish yourself as a nonprofit organization, you can apply to become tax exempt. And that means that when people donate to you, they can write off their donations to you. And that also means that you follow a few rules. And I covered that in separate videos, which I'll link for you. But 501c3 status is like your key. It's your ticket to getting grant funding because most funders will not give to you unless you have 501c3 tax exempt status. That's like one of the basic requirements for the majority of grants you're going to see. So the question of the day is, how do you get grants when you don't even have your 501c3 status? And a lot of times people are asking this because they don't have the money to pay for the application fee, right? So the application fee is $275 if you're using the 1023 EZ form and $600 if you're using the 1023 form. So people ask this question a lot. Well, how do I get grant funding? Because I can't even afford to get the status. That's not fair. So I'm just going to break this down a little bit and make a couple of points. And near the end of the video, I'll share some options for you to get grant funding even if you don't have 501c3 status. First of all, I'll say to you, if you've watched any of my videos, you should know that grant funding should not be the primary strategy for your startup nonprofit. So a lot of people go into it thinking, I just will survive by grants because somehow there's this myth out there that nonprofits make it big and survive because they just keep winning more and more grants. And yes, grant funding is out there, but on the other side, it's competitive and you have to be skilled at winning grants and you have to develop relationships and invest in having an organization that actually produces outcomes or that has a really compelling story or really compelling ask. And unfortunately, most startup nonprofits don't really have that in the beginning. It takes a while to get there. And so relying so much on grant funding is really the wrong move. So the first thing I'll say to you is you shouldn't even be looking for a grant. This is just my opinion. Take it or leave it. You shouldn't even be looking for a grant if you want to start a nonprofit. What you should be doing is investing in getting a board together and making sure that that board commits to putting money together as a group to finance the cost of starting your organization. And if it takes a month to get there, or if it takes 12 months to get there, then you all should commit to doing that. You should commit to putting your money together. Everyone says we'll give $50 a month. And if that's 5 people, that's $250 a month. You're almost there for the 1023 Easy form just off 1 month. So I'll just say there first, I do not believe you should be looking for a grant because it sets you up for a false reality that you just need to go from grant to grant to grant. And then when you start getting disappointed because you hear no, you're like, well, how am I supposed to make money for my nonprofit if funders won't give me money? And that's just the wrong attitude to have. Which leads me to my next point. If you're going to start a nonprofit, all of your work and your energy in the beginning really should focus on building relationships and building up a donor base. What do I mean by a donor base? That means a group of people who support your organization and hopefully continue to support your organization over the years. And you should spend your efforts and your time doing that instead of worrying about the grants you can't apply for or the grants that just not are accessible to you. So focus on building your individual donor base. And also by doing that, you'll get the money you need to do a lot of your startup programming. And that's important too, because whether you realize it or not, a lot of grant funding is restrictive. A lot of funders will say you can't use it for this, you can't use it for staff, or you can't use it for this kind of equipment. And you'll find yourself boxed in. And what you'll find yourself doing is you're dictating you're letting the funder or the grant dictate what your program is based on their requirements. And you never want to do that. You want to dictate for yourself what your program is. You want your community and you as an organization to develop the right program. And then you want to tell funders, this is what we need to make it happen. You don't want the other way. You don't want funding or grants to dictate how you run, okay? One more thing I want to say about not having 501c3 status. So, if you apply to the IRS and essentially you are waiting for an approval, you are in a pending status. So, if people give to your organization while you're in pending status, they can't necessarily write off your donation. But once you're approved, people can retroactively go back to the day that you applied, and whatever donation was given during that period where you were waiting will be tax deductible, okay, once you get your status, okay? So even if you don't currently have 501c3 status and people are concerned about giving to you, you can tell them, oh, this will be tax deductible once we get our status. That doesn't necessarily work on the funder side. You don't see a lot of funders saying, oh, you got pending status? Okay, well, apply anyway and we'll give you the money and we'll just wait. They're a lot less flexible, especially if you're a new organization and they don't know you. So I would just play this by ear. Most times they're not going to allow that, but it's always helpful to be upfront and talk to your funders about what you're going through to see how flexible they can be with you. Okay, so what do you do when you're still looking for grants? You heard everything I said and said, Tiffany, but we still want this grant. Where do we look? So one place you might want to look is your community foundation. So community foundations are established in communities all over the country. They're usually the largest or one of the largest foundations in an area, and they manage the local, regional pots of money. They manage funds and grants for a lot of different organizations and a lot of different entities. So they know about a lot of funding that's available in the community, but they also know a lot about the needs of nonprofits. So some community foundations really do a lot of outreach to nonprofits. They do training, they do professional development, and a lot of them understand that newer nonprofits still need help getting their infrastructure together. And a lot of that could also mean money. So they will give startup grants even if you don't have a 501c3, and they will help you kind of get there. If they don't provide money, they may provide consultants or funding for consultants to help you get there. So your community foundation might have funds like that, might have a program like that. It's not in every area, but they may. You should always check. You can also check with your nonprofit association if you have one in your area. Not every state has one, but most of them do. So they also may have a similar startup program where they either provide money or they provide consultants or help and assistance to guide you through that startup process. Your other option is to get a fiscal sponsor. So a fiscal sponsor is basically an organization vouching for you, and they are the main grantee for whatever grant you want, and they funnel the money to you so you can do the work. So they will take some kind of admin fee off the top of the grant, and then the rest of it they'll just disperse to you and you can use it however you like. So a lot of people do this when they're just not ready to establish themselves as a real organization, but they still want to be able to access grant funding, or they're still new and still waiting for their status to come and they want to get grants. So this is an option for you. Your community foundation also may be a fiscal sponsor for you, or just another nonprofit may be a fiscal sponsor. There are some nonprofits that specifically do fiscal sponsorships, like that's their thing. And then there are just nonprofits who may be willing, based on their relationship with you, to assume a fiscal sponsor status to help you out specifically. One thing I will say is not every funder likes fiscal sponsorships, so you need to read the fine print when you're applying for a grant and make sure they're okay that you're using a fiscal sponsor. And the reason why they may not be okay is because basically there's a percentage of their money that's not going to go to any programming off the bat. And so that's just even less money that will go to whatever you're trying to do for your organization. So they may not necessarily like fiscal sponsorship, but there still are some funders who get it, who get that a lot of newer organizations or new projects need fiscal sponsors. And then there are also some fiscal sponsors who don't charge a lot. So everything is so variable. You see how I keep saying it depends, talk to this person to find out more. So I want to give the options available to you if you're looking for grants before you have a 501c3 status. But I'll just say, please don't just rely on grants. And if you're really looking for funding in the beginning, look to your board, look to building in your community a donor base so people can start giving to you. And that will pay off. Doing that upfront networking and building those strong relationships will pay off for years to come. So I really just recommend, instead of focusing so much on grants, you focus on getting individual donations. So I hope this made sense. If you need help designing a campaign to get a bunch of donors when you're starting from scratch, check out my free worksheet on how to make your first $10,000 using a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. It's a free worksheet that guides you through the steps to design your own campaign. Click the link in the description box just so you can see how I kind of laid out that process to make it easy for you. All right. So if you have any questions for me, don't forget to visit me at www.bossonabudget.com, and I will see you in the next video.